Hola, brujas y brujos. Welcome to another episode of the Lone Star Brujas podcast. I am your host, Sin, and today we will be talking about a topic that has fascinated people for well over a century. I've been fascinated with it since back in when I was a kid, and it's a topic that's been blamed for hauntings. It's been featured in horror movies. It's condemned by some religions, and it's been embraced by others. Also, it's debated by skeptics and believers as well. So in today's episode, we are talking about the Ouija board. Now, depending on who you ask, you'll get a completely different answer about what the Ouija board actually is. Some people will tell you that it's nothing more than a board or cardboard, plastic, imaginary thing. Others will tell you that it's a tool for communicating with spirits. Some see it as part of the occult. Others see it as something they would never allow in their home. And maybe you've had an experience yourself, one that you really can't explain. But the truth is that the Ouija board is much bigger than the actual object itself. It's a symbol of curiosity, a symbol of grief, a symbol of fear, and it's just a fascination of the unknown. So today we're going to remove some of the Hollywood filter from it, and I want to have a real conversation and talk more about this object and where it came from. So let's go ahead and dive into today's episode.
Hola, brujas y brujos. This is Sara with Lone Star Brujas. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to share an important disclaimer with you. All items are sold as Curo only. The products and information provided on this podcast and our website have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or medical condition. These items are intended for spiritual, ritual, and traditional purposes only. You should not rely solely on the content provided here, and we assume no liability for any inaccuracies. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosing, or treatment plans. Always consult a qualified medical professional regarding any questions you may have about a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking help when needed. Cuídese, mi gente. Ándale, Karen. Cántame, por favor.
So we'll explore more where the Ouija board came from and why it became associated with the occult, how different cultures and spiritual traditions view it, whether it's actually connected to brujeria or not, what skeptics believe is happening, and why intention and discernment may be the most important part of this entire conversation. But this episode isn't here to tell you what to believe. That's not what it is at all. I thought it would be a great topic to discuss because one, I have used one before. I actually used one as a child, and at one point I was actually even making them. So with that being said, I'm really here just to give information. Some of it might even be my own opinion, but I'll let you guys decide for yourself. So let's go ahead and let's talk about what the occult is. So before we even touch the Ouija board, I think we need to clear up some misconceptions in spirituality. So the word occult, the moment that people hear that word, they often think of demons, curses, and just flat out evil. But that's not really what the word means. The word occult actually comes from the Latin word occultus, meaning hidden, secret, or concealed. And the occult simply refers to knowledge that is hidden from ordinary understanding throughout history. And this includes astrology, alchemy, ceremonial magic, symbolism, divination, what else? Mysticism, And it's really just the study of spiritual mysteries in general. It doesn't automatically make something good or bad. It simply means that it's exploring what lies beyond an ordinary human experience. So like any tool or any body of knowledge, the intention behind it does matter. Some people may think otherwise. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. We're always planting a seed, and you can research and make your own judgment calls. So, for example, a knife can prepare food or it can cause harm. The object isn't making the decision, the person is. And that's an important thought to hold on to throughout today's episode. So the history of the Ouija board is pretty interesting because when I was looking more into it, the biggest surprise for most people is that learning about this object, it's not an ancient tool. It didn't come from medieval witches. It wasn't discovered in any kind of like old haunted area. It wasn't even created by traditional brujas or witches. It was born during a spiritualist movement in the late 1800s. So during that time, death surrounded everyday life, unfortunately. Life expectancy was a lot shorter back then as well. So millions of people desperately wanted to hear from someone they had lost. They wanted that closure. So during that time, mediums became very popular. Seances were happening quite a bit. They were happening in people's homes. So people were experimenting with table tipping, automatic writing, spirit rapping, and talking boards. So eventually, someone realized they could create a board with letters and numbers that people could use themselves. The Ouija board was marketed towards ordinary families. It was a message that they were mentioning as they were advertising this thing. So pretty much it was made to sell to people that give them the opportunity or give them the idea that they could talk to someone that had passed away. And when they did this, they actually made it to where it didn't seem as it was something that was terrifying, but they made it more fascinating. And one of today's most feared objects was actually just sold as family entertainment. But why did it become so feared? Because eventually entertainment collided with the unknown. People began reporting experiences that they couldn't explain. Some claimed to receive accurate messages. Others described some pretty frightening encounters. And then Hollywood came in and amplified that with every scary story they could possibly incorporate the Ouija board in. And religious communities warned against the spirit communication. And the paranormal community embraced it. Imagine that. Now, all of a sudden, the Ouija board developed a reputation far beyond what its creators had probably imagined. But is the fear really about the board, or was it about the possibility that we might actually receive an answer? Now, the Ouija board and the occult eventually became associated together because it represented communication with something unseen, something that was unknown. And again, not because the board itself possessed some magical quality, but because people believed it could bridge, the two worlds, our realm and the beyond. That placed it alongside other forms of divination and spirit communication. Of course, we do tarot on the podcast. That's a form of divination that I truly do believe in. There's pendulums, scrying mirrors, seances, and mediumship. All of those things, which if you're here listening, most of you do believe in. I believe in, I've seen it, and I have some of these gifts as well. Now, the board became another attempt to answer humanity's one of their oldest questions. And that is, what happens after we die? What is it actually used for? Historically, people have used spirit boards for many reasons. Some hoped to be able to contact a loved one. Others searched for guidance. Some wanted proof that spirits existed. Some simply wanted to satisfy curiosity. And today you'll find every perspective imaginable now. Some paranormal investigators still use it. Some occult practitioners still also use it, but then there's also some that avoid it altogether. And most Christians just reject it entirely, at least the ones I know. And there's some skeptics out there that explain everything through psychology, which brings us to another important point, that sometimes the biggest mystery isn't even the board. And I've mentioned that earlier. It's the person sitting in front of it. It's the driver. Now, what skeptics believe is that science offers an explanation called the idiomotor effect. And I might be saying that wrong. But what this is, it's small unconscious muscle movements that cause the planchet, which is the little thing that you use to guide it over the letters. They claim that these unconscious muscle movements cause it to move without anyone realizing that they're moving it. And that explanation doesn't satisfy everyone, unfortunately, but it's important enough that we should acknowledge it. I'll say that because, again, this episode isn't about forcing anyone to believe one way or another, but it's about understanding the different ways people interpret the same experience. Now, is the Ouija board part of brujeria? And this is a very important question. And this question is probably the question I have been asked before. Is this a traditional tool used in brujeria? And the answer is no. So spirit communication does absolutely exist within many forms of brujeria, but historically it happens through divination with ancestors, prayer, altars, dreams, offerings, spirits that you know, relationships that you've built with certain spirits. Traditional brujeria generally emphasizes relationship over just random spirits. You're calling on spirits you've built a relationship with through those aspects that I just mentioned. It's not just saying, hey, who's out there? No, we don't do that. Well, at least I don't. And that's a very different approach. That's typically not done in this practice. Again, this is from what I know. If there's anything else out there that maybe some information I'm missing, or if anybody has a different perspective on that, I would definitely love to hear it. But this is just what I know, what I've been taught. Now, before you use this tool, and just like anything you do spiritually, protection before communication is a must. This is a lesson that appears across countless traditions. Protection comes before communication. Whether you're religious, spiritual, an occultist, or just simply curious, those boundaries matter. Many practitioners will either pray first, cleanse first, ground themselves first. They will set the intentions first, and when they're finished, they close what they've opened. So if you've heard of closing the circle, that's typically where this comes from. Because whether you believe you're speaking to spirits or exploring your subconscious, intentional beginnings deserve intentional endings. If you open it, you must close it. And this brings me to what I think is a real lesson that's hidden in today's conversation. The Ouija board isn't the only thing people can bring or breathe life into it. So if you think about it, a candle is just wax, right? Until someone lights it and they pray over it. An altar is just a table until you fill it with, pictures and remembrance. You gather around it. You start to light more candles and really bring in that love to it. A wedding ring is just metal until two people give it a meaning. And a picture, it's just paper until memories make it priceless. So across countless spiritual traditions, people believe that repeated intention, ritual, attention, and devotion give objects significance. Others understand that this is psychologically recognizing that our minds assign a deep emotional meaning to symbols. There's different explanations, but it's all still the same observation. If you think about it, maybe the question isn't, does the board have power? Maybe the question should be, what power am I giving it? Because if we breathe life into things, and not just this, but anything you do, if you constantly have fear about something, you're putting energy into it. But if you have hope or faith, you're putting life and energy into that. You can put energy into almost anything. And that's manifestation as well. You can manifest it to be whatever it is that you're capable of doing. That's with love, hate, anxiety, confidence, resentment. The more you do it, the more it's going to grow. And whether you believe that's happening spiritually, psychologically, the outcome can still shape your life. So the Ouija board may simply just be a board, but obsession isn't cardboard. Fear isn't cardboard. Grief isn't cardboard. Those things still live inside us, and they travel with us into every spiritual practice that we choose. So no matter which road you walk, those things are still going to be with you. Now here's my final thought. Is the board evil? I don't think that's really the best question, honestly, but maybe there's some different questions that we could ask. Why Why are you reaching for it? What is your intention to use it? What are you hoping to hear? Is it closure? Is it curiosity? Is it certainty or just comfort? But if something answers, will you know how to discern the difference between reality, symbolism, and psychological? Because discernment, it's one of the greatest spiritual protections any of us can cultivate. Not fear, not obsession, but discernment. Whether you're walking a path of faith, brujeria, you're very interested in the occult, or you don't even have a spiritual practice at all or a spiritual path at all, discernment will serve you better than fear ever will. And I will leave it at that. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode. If this episode made you think, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you believe the Ouija board is simply a game? Is it more of a mind game? Do you think it's a spiritual communication tool? Or do you think it's something else entirely? I would definitely love to hear your opinions on this. Either way, it's a fascinating topic, and it's a fascinating tool that I know some will just not mess with it at all, and others will. I think it just depends on you and what you're drawn to. But until next time, protect your peace, protect your energy, and I will see you on the next episode of The Lone Star Brujas. Sí, cuando sueño parece te miro, susurrándole a los ojos dormidos.